You're listening to Full Circle Weekly News. These articles are compiled by Eric Zianready, and I'm your host, Moss Bliss. This is episode 368, covering week 21, May 20th to 27th, 2024. MX Linux 23.3 has been published, created by communities of the Anti-X and Mepis projects. The release is based on Debian with improvements from the Anti-X project and packages from its own repository. The distribution uses a sysvinit initialization system and its own tools for configuring and deploying the system. There are 32 and 64-bit builds with the XFCE desktop, as well as 64-bit builds with the KDE desktop and the Fluxbox window manager available for download. The Switchroot project has announced that a build of Ubuntu 24.04 is ready for download on Nintendo Switch game consoles based on the Tegra X1 SoC. In addition to Ubuntu, the Switchroot project also provides builds of Fedora 39, Laka 5.0, and Lineage OS 18.1 for download on the Nintendo Switch. Booting is done from an SD card using the Hecate bootloader. Additional components developed by the project are distributed on the Apache 2.0 license. Currently, only KDE Plasma and Unity are supported. Builds with GNOME are delayed due to problems with touchscreens and full-screen output performance when using X11 on ARM64 systems. Supported features include pairing with Nintendo Switch Pro, GameCube, DualShock 4, Xbox One, and Joy-Con controllers, overclocking the CPU, GPU, and memory, support for USB-C, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, DisplayPort/HDMI, light sensor, sound, touchscreen, eMMC/SD, drivers for Tegra GPU with support for Vulkan, OpenGL, OpenGL-ES, EGL, and CUDA, hardware acceleration for video decoding, and deep sleep mode. NFC and infrared are not supported. IceWM 3.5.0 is out. IceWM provides full control through keyboard shortcuts, the ability to use virtual desktops, taskbar, and application menus, and you can use tabs to group windows. The window manager is configured through a fairly simple configuration file, and themes can be used. One can combine windows in the form of tabs. Built-in applets are available for monitoring CPU, memory, and traffic. The code is written in C++ and distributed on the GPL v2 license. CADzinho 0.6.0 has been released, providing tools for creating simple 2D technical drawings. This version implements a new rendering architecture which makes it possible to get rid of interface freezes during operation. The code is written in C with additions in Lua, distributed under the MIT license. The output is generated using the SDL 2.0 library and the OpenGL 3.2 API. Builds are prepared for Linux, Windows, and Mac OS. The program supports drawing primitives such as lines, polygonal meshes, circles, arcs, ellipses, text, hatching, splines, images, points, labels, attributes, and polylines. Layers and blocks are supported, as well as working with files in DXF and SVG formats. The result can be exported to G-code, HPGL, PDF, SVG, PS, or image formats. A scripting language is provided for developing macros, extensions, and customizing the interface. The Zero Brain Studio development environment can be used to develop extensions. The Geary 46.0 email client has been published. The project was originally founded by the Yorba Foundation, which created Shotwell, but later development was taken over by the GNOME community. The code is written in Vala and is licensed under the LGPL. Builds will soon be prepared in the form of a Flatpak package. The goal of the project development is to create a product rich in capabilities but extremely easy to use and consuming a minimum of resources. The email client is designed both for standalone use and to work in conjunction with web-based email services such as Gmail and Yahoo. The interface is implemented using the GTK3 Plus library. A SQLite database is used to store the message database, and a full-text index is created to search the message database. To work with IMAP, a G-object-based library is used that works in asynchronous mode. The new version simplifies notification messages, solves problems with navigation, ensures that messages continue to be delivered after errors during data transfer, adjusts the correct counting of unread messages, updates translations, and makes minor improvements to the interface. GhostBSD 24.04.1 has been published, built on FreeBSD 14 stable and offering the Mate user environment. The community creates unofficial builds with XFCE. By default, GhostBSD uses a ZFS file system. Both work in live mode and installation on a hard drive are supported using ginstall written in Python. Boot images are created for x86-64 architecture. Alpine Linux 3.20 is available, a minimalistic distribution built on the Muscle system library and a set of BusyBox utilities. The distribution has increased security requirements and is built with stack smashing protection. OpenRC is used as the initialization system, and the APK package manager is used to manage packages. Alpine is used to build official Docker container images and is used in the Post-Market OS project. Bootable ISO images for x86-64, x86, ARM-HF, AArch64, ARM-v7, PPC64LE, and S390X are prepared in 6 versions: Standard, Network Bootable, Extended, for virtual machines, and for the Xen hypervisor. Qualcomm has announced that it's bringing changes to the main Linux kernel to support the ARM SoC Snapdragon X Elite, which uses the 12-core Qualcomm Orion CPU and Qualcomm Adreno GPU. The chip is aimed at use in laptops and PCs and is ahead of the Apple M3 and Intel Core Ultra 155H chips in many performance tests. Devices based on Snapdragon X Elite are expected in the middle of the year and will come with Windows. The changes published by Qualcomm provide the ability to use Linux on these devices. In addition to patches for the Linux kernel, they, together with Lenovo, ARM, and Linaro, are developing the DTB Loader driver for UEFI firmware based on the Tiano Core EDK2 open platform, a Grub-based bootloader, and scripts for creating your own Debian builds for some devices based on the Snapdragon X Elite SoC, as well as already produced SoCs. Among the already released laptops that support Linux booting are the Lenovo Yoga C630, Lenovo Flex 5G, and Lenovo ThinkPad X13S. The bootloader supports dual booting of Windows and Linux. KDE Gear 24.05, developed by the KDE Project, has been announced. This is the second major update to the suite of applications published as part of the KDE 6 branch and after the transition to using the Qt6 library. The suite contains releases of 250 programs, libraries, and plugins. Information about the availability of live builds with the new application releases can be found at the link in the show notes. New versions of individual applications can be downloaded from the FlatHub and Snapcraft directories. gCompris 4.1 is out, a free learning center for preschool and primary school children. The package provides 190 mini lessons and modules, offering from a simple graphics editor, puzzles, and keyboard simulator to lessons in mathematics, geography, and reading training. gCompris uses the Qt library and is developed by the KDE community. Ready-made builds are created for Linux, Mac OS, Windows, Raspberry Pi, and Android. New work has been done to improve the graphics in various lessons. The Sane Backends 1.3.1 package has been published, which includes a set of drivers, the Scan Image command line utility, the Sane D background process for organizing network scanning, and libraries with the Sane API implementation. The project code is distributed under the GPL v2 license. The package supports 1,804 scanner models, of which 825 have full support for all functions. For 825 models, the level of support is rated as good, acceptable for 130, and minimal for 24. Additionally, for 499 devices, there is an incompletely tested driver implementation. Support for 478 scanners remains unrealized. With the transition of the GNOME OS distribution to use the system DSys update component to organize atomic system updates, the development of a new installer for GNOME OS began. The development is still at the initial prototype stage, which is based on the interface layouts published in April. At the current stage of development, the main focus is still on the general architecture and determining the integral logic, for example, organizing navigation and setting the order of page display in preparation for installation. The installer code is developed in Rust and distributed on the GPL v3 license. GNOME OS is an experimental distribution for GNOME developers and testers to evaluate the state of desktop environment development, explore new features as they emerge, and test their applications running on development branches of GNOME. Following the release of Red Hat Enterprise Linux 9.4, an update to Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8.10 was published, which will be supported at least until 2029. The installation builds are prepared for x86-64, S390X, PPC64LE, and AArch64 architectures, but are available for download only to registered Red Hat customer portal users. RHEL 8.10 was the last release in the 8.x branch, formed at the full support stage, implying the inclusion of functional improvements. On May 31, 2024, the 8.x branch will be moved to the maintenance stage, where priorities will shift toward bug fixes and security, with minor improvements related to support for critical hardware systems. The Raven OS 0.5 project has been released, developing a free BSD-based operating system aimed at achieving compatibility with macOS applications and providing a macOS-style user shell. The project's code is distributed under the BSD license. The stated goals of the project are to achieve compatibility with macOS applications at the level of source code and executable files. In the first case, it is possible to recompile the code of macOS applications for execution in Raven OS. In the second, embedding changes into the kernel and toolkit to run Mac0 executable files compiled for x86, 64, and ARM64 architectures. Each home directory has a ~/library subdirectory for applications that use Apple's Cocoa programming interface. For compatibility with macOS, a partial implementation of the Cocoa and Objective-C runtime programming interface is provided, as well as compilers and linkers modified to support them. In addition to the macOS compatibility layer, Raven OS also offers the ability to run Linux applications based on FreeBSD's Linuxolator. The graphical environment is built on its own Windows server using a stripped-down composite LabWC server, WL-Roots, and the Wayland protocol. Graphical applications can use the Qt and Cocoa frameworks. The interface uses typical macOS concepts such as a top bar with a global menu, an identical menu structure, keyboard shortcuts, a similar style filer file manager, and support for commands such as launchctl and open. You've been listening to Full Circle Weekly News. For more details, see the next issue of the magazine at fullcirclemagazine.org or check the links in the show notes. You can contact me at bardmoss@pm.me. I'll see you next week.